when a determined black teenager uncovers a chilling conspiracy to sabotage a billionaire's private jet. His timely warning not only prevents a catastrophic tragedy, but also exposes a tangled web of greed and betrayal orchestrated by those closest to her. What follows is a gripping tale of courage, justice, and an unlikely bond that redefines both of their lives in ways they never imagined. Juliana Hart leaned lightly against the sleek glass railing of her penthouse terrace, the sprawling city skyline glimmering like scattered diamonds under the evening glow. Each towering structure before her was a testament to her tireless ambition, a monument to the empire she had built from the ground up. Despite the accolades and wealth, however, a persistent void gnawed at her, a shadow she rarely allowed herself to acknowledge. Behind her, Anthony Hart scrolled through his phone, the device capturing his attention as if it held the answers to his restlessness. His tailored suit was flawless, and his carefully curated persona radiated sophistication. Yet, to Juliana, his presence had become more ornament than partner. The man who once stood by her as her confidant now seemed a stranger, a polished stranger playing his role at charity galas and public events while growing increasingly detached. "Would you like to join me for dinner tonight?" Juliana asked, her voice soft yet measured. "We could try that new place by the waterfront." Anthony barely looked up. "I'll check my schedule," he murmured, his tone detached. "I might have plans." Juliana nodded, masking the sting of his reply with practiced ease. Disappointment had long ceased to surprise her. It was just another thread in the fabric of their strained marriage. If connection couldn't be found in her home, she resolved she would seek it in her work, her ever-expanding empire, where her decisions mattered and results spoke louder than words. On the estate's expansive lawn, Malik Johnson pushed a mower with steady determination. Despite the heat, he worked with unwavering focus, each stroke of the mower bringing him closer to his goal, saving enough to afford his first year of college. For Malik, this job was more than a paycheck. It was a step toward easing the burdens his parents carried, a way to repay their sacrifices. His father toiled long hours at a construction site, while his mother cleaned downtown offices late into the night. Malik had promised himself he would lighten their load, and every dollar earned here brought that promise closer to reality. "Malik," Juliana called from the terrace. He stopped, straightened, and wiped the sweat from his brow before jogging over to her. "Yes, Miss Hart? You've done excellent work with the lawn," she said, her voice warm yet businesslike. She gestured toward the fence line. "I was thinking of adding a row of roses along there. Do you think you could handle that?" Malik's face brightened with a smile. "Of course, ma'am. I'll take care of it." For a fleeting moment, Juliana's lips curved into a smile, a rare gesture, almost as if it surprised her as much as him. "Good," she replied, her tone firm but not unkind. Malik nodded and returned to his work, unaware that his unassuming presence in this world of wealth and power would soon set off a chain of events that neither of them could have foreseen. "And how's school going? Still planning on college?" Juliana asked, her tone softer than usual. "Yes, ma'am," Malik replied earnestly. "I'm saving up. I don't want my parents to worry about tuition." Her sharp, businesslike demeanor briefly melted into something warmer. "Keep that drive, Malik. It'll take you far." She turned to leave, her footsteps graceful as ever. As Juliana retreated back toward the house, Anthony emerged from the terrace, his gaze trailing her before settling momentarily on Malik. The indifference in his eyes was unmistakable. Malik returned to his work, oblivious to the gathering storm inside the Hart household, a storm that would soon engulf all their lives. Later that evening, Anthony met with Ethan Grant, a daring private pilot whose charm and adventurous spirit had quickly made him a fixture in Juliana's social circle. Ethan was everything Juliana wasn't: impulsive, reckless, and intoxicatingly carefree. What had started as casual exchanges at one of Juliana's glittering parties had evolved into secret meetings in the guest house, a space far from prying eyes. "She's too consumed by her empire to notice anything," Anthony murmured, pacing the polished wood floor. His expression was a mixture of frustration and resolve. We deserve more than being props in her life. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a sly grin spreading across his face. You don't have to convince me, he said smoothly. I know exactly how to make it happen. A mechanical failure mid-flight. No one would suspect a thing. Anthony's jaw tightened, his hesitation fleeting. Just make sure it can't be traced back to us, he said coldly. Once she's gone, we'll have everything. Unbeknownst to the two conspirators, Malik had been working nearby, pruning hedges close to the guest house. The low murmur of their voices carried to his ears, sharp and unmistakable in the evening air. Mid-flight failure. Make it look like an accident. Ethan's voice came through clearly, each word a punch to Malik's gut. Malik froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His hands trembled, his pruning shears slipping from his grip as realization dawned. He had stumbled upon a plot that could not only destroy Juliana Hart, but also take countless lives. That evening, Malik returned home, his mind a whirlwind of fear and urgency. Seated at their modest dining table, his parents noticed the unease etched on his face. You okay, Malik? His mother asked, her voice filled with concern. He hesitated, his fork hovering over his plate. His thoughts raced. Should he tell them? Should he call the police? Who would believe him? He looked up, meeting his mother's worried eyes. He began, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of what he'd uncovered was too much to bear alone. I overheard something yesterday, Malik finally confessed, his voice heavy with the weight of his revelation. Miss Hart, her husband, and that pilot Ethan, they're planning something dangerous. His father's brow furrowed. Dangerous how? Malik took a shaky breath. They're going to sabotage her plane. They want it to crash. His mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Malik, are you sure about this? I'm sure, he said, his voice trembling. But what if she doesn't believe me? What if I get fired for saying something? His father's voice was firm and steady. Son, sometimes doing the right thing comes with risks. But if you stay silent and something happens to that woman, could you live with yourself? The weight of his father's words pressed down on Malik. Slowly he nodded. I'll tell her. First thing tomorrow. The next morning, Malik approached Juliana as she meticulously reviewed blueprints in her study. His palms were clammy, and his heartbeat thundered in his ears, but he forced himself forward. Miss Hart, he began, his voice steady despite the fear gripping him. I need to talk to you. It's about something important. Juliana looked up, her sharp gaze instantly assessing the seriousness in his tone. Go ahead, Malik. He swallowed hard. Yesterday, I overheard Mr. Hart and Ethan Grant talking. They're planning to tamper with your plane. They want it to crash. Her piercing eyes locked onto his. That's a serious accusation. Are you certain? Yes, he said emphatically. Please just check the plane. If I'm wrong, you can fire me. But if I'm right, his words trailed off, the gravity of the situation hanging in the air. Juliana studied him intently, her instincts urging her not to dismiss him outright. After a tense moment, she nodded. All right, I'll have the plane inspected. Hours later, Juliana's trusted mechanic confirmed the unthinkable. The plane's fuel system had been sabotaged and its electrical wiring tampered with. The evidence was clear. Malik's warning had saved her life. That evening, Juliana sat alone in her study, her emotions a mix of fury, heartbreak, and relief. The man she had once loved, the husband who had stood by her side, had plotted her death. And Ethan, a man she had trusted and welcomed into her circle, had been his willing accomplice. The betrayal cut deeper than she could have imagined. Malik's courage had not only exposed the plot, but also rekindled something in Juliana she hadn't felt in years: trust. She called him in her office later that night. Malik, she said, her voice steady but warm. You saved my life. I won't forget that. Now, I need your help again. We're going to make sure they pay for what they've done. Together, they began to devise a plan to outsmart the conspirators. Juliana worked closely with law enforcement, gathering irrefutable evidence of Anthony and Ethan's scheme, while Malik kept a watchful eye on their every move. Over the next few weeks, their meticulous strategy unfolded. Juliana faked her departure on another trip, leaving Anthony and Ethan to believe their plan had succeeded. Meanwhile, Hidden cameras and audio equipment captured every detail of their celebratory conversations. The day of reckoning arrived in dramatic fashion. Juliana stood tall and composed in the center of her penthouse, flanked by law enforcement officers. Anthony and Ethan, summoned under false pretenses, entered the room unsuspectingly. Their confident demeanors quickly dissolved into panic as the undeniable evidence of their conspiracy was laid bare. Audio recordings, video footage, and the mechanic's damning report. The walls of their deceit closed in as the police stepped forward to place them under arrest. Their carefully orchestrated scheme, once so meticulous, crumbled before their eyes. As Anthony was led away in handcuffs, he cast one final look at Juliana, his face a mixture of regret and disbelief. Ethan, on the other hand, wore only defiance, though it did little to mask the fear lurking beneath the surface. For Juliana, their betrayal no longer held the power to wound her. Justice had prevailed, and she would not allow their actions to define her future. In the weeks that followed, Juliana turned her attention to Malik, the young man whose courage had saved her life. Grateful and inspired by his integrity, she took him under her wing. She offered to cover the full cost of his college education, removing the financial burden that had weighed so heavily on him. But her support didn't stop there. Juliana brought Malik into her inner circle, mentoring him and giving him opportunities that went far beyond anything he had imagined for himself. Over time, their bond grew into something extraordinary, a relationship built on mutual respect and a shared determination to rise above life's challenges. Malik flourished under Juliana's guidance, his dreams expanding as he learned to navigate a world he once thought was out of reach. For Juliana, Malik's unwavering honesty and resilience rekindled her faith in the power of trust and human connection. Together, they transformed what could have been a story of tragedy into one of redemption and hope. Their partnership became a testament to the strength of character, the courage to do what's right, and the possibilities that arise when two lives, seemingly worlds apart, come together to create something remarkable.